Hello, everybody. Give us a couple of minutes. We're having a technical issue, and I will start shortly.
How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing great, thank you. Do you usually have the music blasting before you get fired up for these things?
Say again. I couldn't hear you.
Wonderful music.
Yeah. Well, that is a for those in the audience because we are live now.
Ah,
I have found this new jazz saxophonist named Tia Fuller. My son turned me on to, and she is smoking.
amazing.
If you like that stuff.
I love it.
So I'm gonna turn her off and unshare my screen so that we're it's just the two of us. Hi, my friend. How are you?
How are you?
I am well, thanks.
Great.
Folks, I want to introduce my friend and coach Jacob Rupp. I'm going to do a poll question here quickly to ask why people joined today. But before we do that, give us the 2-minute version of who Jacob is. Who are you? What do you do?
First of all, you look born to do this, so congratulations on that. I wear a couple different hats. I call myself an executive performance coach, but I've been a rabbi for about 15 years, and it's actually getting more than that as well. But I'm exceptionally passionate about helping leaders and motivated individuals who usually wind up being leaders kind of get out of their own way and sort of materialize the things that they want and that they feel like inside of themselves in their lives, in their business, and with their family. Obviously, that's just because I love doing that for myself and have been on sort of my own journey with that. I have 4 children. I've been married for, I'm going to get in trouble if I get the years wrong, but old enough that I have a 13-year-old, she just turned 13 yesterday, daughter. And my wife and I have been married probably about 16 years, I think. Living now, thank God, in Arizona, having moved from Minneapolis, originally from California. And I think that's about all of me in a nutshell.
All right. Well, beautiful. I love it. So I'm going to start off with a poll question. And the question is, why did you join today? So I'm going to launch that there. If the participants will answer that question, then I also wanted to remind everybody this is being recorded. So if you want to ask questions, feel free to use the Q&A. If you want to speak, raise your hand and I will get you online, but it will be recorded for posterity.
I'm just upset I can't vote in this because I just wanted to see Christian and Jacob's face.
Right. And I think, that's funny that that's the majority of the answers right now. I don't know what that means. So maybe people didn't have an expectation. The polling questions, by the way, are anonymous. So, feel free to answer fearlessly.
I just think we should talk about how we're so good looking as opposed to addressing the growth mindset question. I think that's
right?
Really what people want to see.
Right. Well, I mean, you can see me any day. All right. So I like the very first answer. What exactly is a growth mindset?
Carol Dweck is the famous psychologist, and I was quoting her. She's a psychologist from Stanford, and I was quoting her for years before I actually read her book, Growth. And I recommend, the concept is so great, I thought I didn't have to read the book. The book was actually better than, no, it's called Mindset, not Growth. Mindset, Carol Dweck, Mindset. But the book was phenomenal. And the idea of a growth mindset is oftentimes we look at everything in life as static. the famous phrase, it is what it is. I'm an avid MMA fan, and there's a guy, Max Holloway, that literally you can just start the buzzer, and Conor McGregor also picked it up, and they will say it is what it is about 400 times in the interview, literally. And as much as we love them, they're wonderful fighters, but as a psychological construct, it's really not true. It is what you make it in a lot of cases. And so there are, again, and you look at applies everywhere, when it comes to health and fitness, when it comes to business. I know it's depending on the political orientation of the people on the show. There was a president who wrote a book called The Art of the Deal. And he speaks about how did he do all these incredible real estate deals in New York? And it was never like he just sort of walked in and paid full price for it. He negotiated here, he figured out there, he made a relationship over here. And so the more that we look at our lives, and again, I'm coming from a very strong religious construct also, so I appreciate the potentially inflammatory nature of this concept. But if we look at just about everything as flexible, and we look at just about everything as we create an idea and then that sort of manifests. And again, since we go on the biblical route, this idea that you see in the book of Genesis, that God gives the ability to name the animals and people and God to Adam, right? Adam and Eve, the human construct, which essentially, from my understanding, is people are unique in being able to understand things and sort of set a context by which they view the world. So the growth mindset is, am I able to change my circumstances, or do we take a more classic perspective and am I locked into where we are?
So entrepreneurs, I think, as a general rule, buy into that idea, right? That they see something and they see that it could be different. It could be better, and they want to change that. What do you see? So assuming that most entrepreneurs have this disposition to a growth mindset, what are some of the things that you see that are challenges to entrepreneurs around that? So yeah, I believe you, Jacob. I can change the world.
I love it. So one of the biggest challenges, and this is across the board, and I can't tell you, I literally see this with just about everyone, and myself included, is that the people that are the best at doing this for other people or for their business, oftentimes will have the most difficult time doing it for themselves. So, you can have a guy that could, I will organize all of your finances and this, that, the other thing. And the guy's financial situation, he might be missing a huge piece. Or I find for myself, I'm exceptionally gifted at helping other people get clarity, but I feel very often unable to get myself clarity in the couple of different things I might be working on. And so the idea of appreciating that we ourselves are a system and we ourselves are going to be kind of ruled by the same thing that we see everything else. So the biggest challenges I see oftentimes with entrepreneurs is they can take an approach to life, to business, to the problems that they solve, but they have a tendency turning that focus on other parts of their life or other things within their teams. So it's not getting the support oftentimes that they need to truly open up, in a broad perspective, all of the different parts of their life and from all of the different perspectives that they'd want to go. So again, the classic example is, I can build a successful business, but my family life falls apart. Or I can, not be able to, I can get in great shape, but then I can't launch my business. So you'll find a giftedness in certain areas. And it's so much so that we almost, in certain media circles, like we almost, we not fantasize, but validate and accept that if I'm exceptional in one area, it means I'm not going to be exceptional in another area. And if you go from that perspective, that's true. But the problem is if the other area is something you care about, so like, why is it just because you're exceptionally successful and gifted in one area doesn't mean that you can't open up and get good at something else? Does that sort of answer the question?
No, I think so. And I think in my personal example and experience, I remember one of my mentors, although he's younger than I am, Pish Patel. I asked him, I was considering forming a board of directors for my company, an external board of directors, to get advice and guidance. And he said, you know what you need? And I said, what? He said, you need a coach. Now, he said this probably about 18 months ago. And you and I have been working since September or October. And what's fascinating to me is this idea behind your subconscious and your intent. And I firmly believe that what he said to me, although I processed it when I heard it, I didn't act on it until I was exposed to you. I didn't go out looking for you, right? And so when I was introduced to you, I didn't even then put those two together. It was only after working with you for several months that I said, huh, I remember now what Peach told me to do. So I have another polling question here.
Do you mind before we do that? Can we just reflect on that? Because that's also something that's
absolutely, go ahead.
So a lot of times, one of the, call it a curse or call it a blessing of the modern day, is the speed of data. So I was just today, I was looking for a new car, and they gave me all the financials and said, this saved you 2.5 hours of, like sitting there drumming your fingers on the desk and trying to figure out what the hell's taking so long in the car dealership. Like, can't you just give me numbers? And so it's like, oh yeah, so I can figure out, and it makes things a lot faster. The problem with that is that it sort of shrunk our expectation for the time and the broad nature of growth. And so what you're saying though is something that's completely true, which is that we'll hear things, and it's sick if you don't sick in an awesome way or sick in a difficult or frustrating way, that I don't know if you ever like go out and clean out your Google Drive, or you go out and clean out your emails from like 4 years ago, or notes that you took on your phone 4 years ago. It's shocking how seeds that you planted then start to grow now. And like, I remember I don't know if I was leaving my phone or I was canceling something out, and I found a note from 4 years ago. It's literally happened. And I had written down, this is where I want to be in my business. And it was 4 years old, and it was crazy. It was exactly and I had done all of it. So that's a little bit also that, oftentimes we can get upset because we're not there yet, but there yet is like a horizon. It's just something you're going towards, and being able to have these little markers of the seeds that you planted, and then paying attention to, did this actually materialize? Again, in a lot of ways, even if you don't know where you want to go, just sort of thinking about, I'd like to be in a certain place, allows you to, I don't want to use the word manifest, but I'll use it, manifest, the kind of help, support, or structure that you're actually looking for.
Well, I'll give you one more example in my personal experience, and it seems kind of mundane, but it proves the point. So I went to this resort in San Diego for a conference, and I was like, God, I love this place. I should bring my family back here, right? Okay. Fast forward 2 years, and we're planning our family trip, and we're looking at hotels. And I couldn't tell you what the name of the hotel was that I stayed at, but we're looking through there. And we're making a decision on where we want to go. And I'm like, that place looks cool. I didn't recognize it when I was looking at it online, right? And when we drive up to the place, I'm like, holy shit, this is the place that I wanted to bring my family back to. I mean, it's nuts.
Right. And it doesn't have to be in a big or a small. Again, that's the idea also, is developing the eyes to see these kinds of things, which is an actual practice that I try to work on all the time. Is it's like, you said it's mundane, but it's not mundane at all, because it reinforces this idea that, we want to set up a kind of a GPS towards where we're going, even if you don't know how to get there. Great. Let's do the polling question.
All right. The polling question here is, what is your biggest challenge in your business, not personally, right now? Okay. So we've got we're kind of all over the board here. We've got revenue growth, cash flow, where to go from here. I think one of the things that I've experienced, and I see a lot of business owners struggling with, is they try to treat the symptom. They don't get to the root cause. And so if you're talking about revenue or profitability or cash flow, they most likely have a common cause, right? And looking at those things, you might say, well, it has to do with finances, right? I mean, it has to do with cash flow and growing the top line or growing profitability. But reality is that it's never those things. To me, those financial things are a reflection of what you and your business are doing underlying. So I like the person that was brave enough to answer where to go from here. So I'm assuming that you are seeing a lot of people out there in the last year that are struggling, right? Maybe the business isn't that bad, but it's just everything else that's going on in the world and the uncertainty. And how do you address that with entrepreneurs?
So first of all, I love what you just said, and I think that that's so important. Is that oftentimes this specific challenge? Again, there's two ways. This comes from a great book by a guy, David Hawkins. He wrote it called Letting Go, and one of the principles of that book is that instead of circumstances causing our feelings cause our circumstances. And if you and it's a perpetual problem. I mean, that's a deep idea. I'll let that sink in.
We'll let that ruminate.
Right. So again, you could say, such and such a thing caused me stress. Such and such a thing caused me anxiety. My boss is such a jerk, and therefore I hate him, and therefore I feel terrible. And the interesting thing is, if you follow yourself or other people around, that a lot of things causes them anger. A lot of things causes things stress. And what happens as a result of that is that they solve the specific challenge, but the thing that they are really trying to run away from doesn't go away. I actually had just today a call with again, one of the things I mentioned to Christian in one of our conversations was a lot of the people I spoke to, and again, I appreciate that I work with a very specific niche, and this is not across the board, but pretty much all of my clients, except for one who had a business that was literally in like public spaces, their businesses all did very well in COVID. And I think that's sort of what you saw was a very running away from the middle class. And a lot of people got really, really screwed. And a lot of people became very, very wealthy. And I think it's only sort of going in that direction more and more. Even with the influx of money coming from the government, it's like still certain people are going to know exactly what to do with that and take advantage of it. And other people are just going to be like, well, I owe myself a television for all the stress. Right. So I think the idea is to, first of all, appreciate what you're trying to solve is the underlying current, the underlying emotion, not the specific problems. One of the things that I'll just give you two examples and you can redirect me if I'm going off. I had I have a friend, I explained a particular theologic challenge that I'm currently working on to a friend of mine over a lunch we were having. And he said, wow, every time I talk to you, you're just like so happy and excited. I would have no idea that you would have this theological challenge. And I said, well, just because I have a theological challenge, why shouldn't I be happy and excited? And he's like, oh, I never thought about that. Right. So for me, I don't really care what the problems are. I care how I feel and how I relate to them. So it's not about the money. It's about how am I responding to the money? The same thing you're saying with the challenge. Do you see the challenge as an existential crisis and an existential threat to your business? Or do you see it as a storm to weather to make you even better than the competition? Because maybe the competition would have fallen. And that was the point that I brought up also with you, is that COVID COVID happened to everybody. And you can't say, therefore, I have an excuse to fall behind. It's like, well, if everybody got hit, the ability to use, again, think about it like weights in a gym. This is going to make me better. This is going to fortify my business more. This is going to make me reconsider things. That's an opportunity. And again, that growth mindset way of looking at it versus how do I bat down the hatches and weather the storm, at which point it will have taken you out.
Right. Are you familiar with Perry Maxwell?
Perry Maxwell? No.
Yeah, he wrote the book 80-20 Marketing, based on the Pareto principle. One of the attendees actually referred me to that book. And I was reading his newsletter yesterday, and he was talking about just that. He was saying that the people in the current I'm sorry, Perry Marshall, not Perry Maxwell. My bad.
Good to have a
Um,
well-read crowd.
right. So what he said in the newsletter is, in this situation that we're in right now, there are going to be people that are distracted. They're going to get involved in the political conversations. They're going to get into the whole mask, non-mask. They're going to get distracted by the economy and Congress and what are they going to do and how much money are they going to spend and where is it going to go. And he said that the people that are focusing on the things that they can affect are the ones that are going to be very wealthy 5 years from now. The people that are engaging in distraction voluntarily or involuntarily are going to end up with nothing, because that's the 80-20. I mean, 20%, that whole thing with Pareto started with the Italian that noticed that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by 20% of the families. And so, I think it's a great point to say, we have to be intentional about how we approach the current situation. And I think what you said is spot on. It is an opportunity. When your business is going fine and you're making money, you have no idea what your real problems are, right? Because you don't have to deal with them. But when you have this external problem come upon you, you don't have a choice. You have to deal with the problems that you have, either personally or in the business.
Well, I think, yes, 100%. And I think that approach to take, again, COVID was like a great example because it was so universal and everyone saw it. But the reality is, and again, it's I think the phrase that I think is it's probably Bruce Lee, but I'm not sure. It's like, you'd rather be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war, right? Which is this idea that we have to be, I'll say that one slowly because that's a great one also. It's like, so far all I've done is quote fighters, and you've quoted all the business people, but it is what it is. And there you go. The idea that we want to prepare ourselves for the turmoil all the time. And so when COVID hit, for example, a lot of people might not, again, I have a mentor of mine who was saying that, and he's an old, he's a seasoned entrepreneur, he's mid-60s, and he does a lot of mentoring of 20s and 30s, up and coming entrepreneurs. And he said, the last 20 years, he said, you didn't have to be good at anything just about to make money because the market was the way it was. He says, now let's see who's really got what it takes. And his, I think that perspective of how do you look at stress? And if you wait until a COVID, if you wait until a recession to start to deal with stress, so again, it's almost like too late. This also comes down to like child raising. They say the best time to become a good parent is 9 months before the kid is born, and the next best time is like now. So it's like, okay, so I haven't really prepped myself to deal with stress quite yet, and I've been dealing with it with Cheetos and I'm not even sure what shows are streaming right now. But the idea is like, do you see stress as something to run away from, or do you take stress and the things that stress you out? Do you, again, I love doing this. Do you make peace with them? First of all, what is the stress coming to help you with? Most people think, I just don't want to feel this way. It's like, well, maybe, but maybe feeling this way is helpful because it's trying to give you an insight into something in your life. So like, I grew up having seen tremendous, and I thought I was nuts. And then I saw Elon Musk do this also. So I realized it was pretty cool. Elon Musk says, as he was in his book, he talks about as he was raising capital for his second his second factory that turned out the Model 3 batteries, at which point that was when, again, until the IPO, that was when everything was flushed. There was so much cash. And he's like, maybe I should start raising funds again. And he's like, I never feel like I'm going to have enough money. He says, I think that came back to my grandmother that was affected in the Irish, famine in the 30s, something like that. So the interesting thing is we carry a lot of these traumas inside. I also had a very volatile financial background growing up. We were comfortable, and then my dad took off and the money disappeared and whatever. And so I'm always sort of worried about that. So whenever I would feel I'd have like a big windfall, something, and I'm feeling good, I have this terror it's all going to go away. And I spoke to a coach of mine about that, and he said, that's your leverage that you're not going to get sloppy. It's not a bad thing. Don't try to go to a place where you have so much abundance that you never feel like the bottom's going to fall out. Rather, appreciate that for what it is. It's not true. It's not true you're going to wind up, again, who knows? But it's like, it's very unlikely we wind up completely destitute in the same place as a lot of people started. On the flip side, realize it's teaching you, be careful with your money. Don't be, just don't be flippant.
Right.
Don't, buy the huge mansion and stop working. Like, just
so you make a negative a positive by using it,
exactly,
as opposed to avoiding it or ignoring it.
Leverage it, learn to love it, and learn to love stress in general, and ask questions about it as opposed to medicate it and get rid of it. Make it your friend. And at that point, and it's a crazy thing, you try this. Any emotion you're feeling, if you try to feel it, automatically it gets lessened if it's a negative emotion. So when you're angry, stop. Don't, again, screaming will actually aggravate it. But if you just feel the anger, say, I'm just going to feel really, really angry right now, automatically you've disassociated from it. It becomes a thing outside of yourself and it starts to go down.
Brilliant. I'm going to ask our next polling question, which is, how was 2020 and what do you expect for 2021? So while they're answering that question, I'll share what I told you the other day. So you had me read a book called The Big Leap, and it talks about the psychologist that wrote it, doctor from Stanford. He talks about your ego wanting to play it safe, so to speak, wants to stay protected, and how it can subconsciously, your ego can subconsciously sabotage you when you're trying to grow. The question is, did we make more money? I'm sorry, I'm going to answer this well. Did we make more money, or did the business make more money? I don't care how you answer that. Your dealer's choice. So this idea that when we try to grow, that our own minds try to work against us. And it manifests itself in several different ways. I recommend reading, I guess he's got 3 books. I've only read the one, but
he's got lots, and they're all wonderful.
So when I revealed to you last week, I said, Jacob, I don't look forward to our weekly meetings. And I was like, should I say this? But I said, this is just true. I said, it's not that I don't value the meetings or that I don't enjoy the meetings. It's that my mind tells me I've got more important things to do, right? And I also noted that sometimes I felt that way when I was having to go to my entrepreneurs organization forums that I've been part of for 10 plus years. I love those people. I love our time together. I always value it. But sometimes before those meetings, I'd get that feeling like I got more important stuff to do. So if you would talk about your mind working against you.
Well, I think that again, it's this idea of making peace. Great. So I just wanted the poll results. Just to notice that most people made more money or stayed the same, and everyone's bullish about the future. So that's excellent.
Yes.
So the mind working against us is kind of a fascinating thing. So again, we're drawing from all kinds of different sides of it. And one of the beautiful things about my forays into religious thought and philosophy and business and leadership ideas is there's so much convergence. It's like crazy. Mm-hmm. And so again, you want to call it, because we come from a biological standpoint, that, we came from a much more unstable place, and therefore we have to be kind of always on our guard. But I think if we even come from a more, let's call it, religious perspective, and the idea of there's a concept, I believe it's in Proverbs, but I could be wrong. Krishna will probably be able to get a line and verse for me. But it says that a man, people were born to toil. And so there's this
Mm.
idea that the nature of our lives, and again, now I'm way off the grid, but there's one of the from a Jewish philosophic position, angels and people are very different. And the nature of an angel is to be static and just do exactly what it's supposed to do. And the nature of people is to be consistently pushing and growing and struggling and working.
Mm.
And so the interesting thing is, if based on that perspective, again, the idea that the mind, again, Gay Hendricks primarily pulls from Taoist and Stoic philosophy, but this is very much in line with the monotheistic approach also, Gay Hendricks is the author of The Big Leap, by the way, for context.
Yes.
But this idea that we were born to struggle, we were born to toil. So that's what it's all about. So now the question is, do you want to look at that constructively, or do you want to look at that as a liability? I think that's at the end of the day. So the mind works against us, but really the mind doesn't work against us. The mind enables us to reach our purpose. Just like oftentimes people would say who are married, marriage is a struggle. Yeah. And what's the point? It's supposed to make you better, right? It's supposed to create better people coming out of the process. Children are a struggle. 100%. The business is a struggle. 100%. Find me someone. I get reality checked from my coach quite often. I was looking at one particular coach's results, and I was looking at my results, and I came back. And I said, "What's the deal? Where am I off?" She said, "Look at the profile of the people that you're comparing yourself against." I said, "No problem." She said, "Are any of them married parents with children?" I said, "No." She says, "Are any of these people have like sustained long-term business growth, or do they have like, is this just like one or 2 months?" I'm like, "Yeah, I think it's just probably 1 or 2 months." She's like, "Great. Do you see how their quality of life is versus your quality of life is?" I'm like, "I don't see that." So the interesting thing is that we have a tendency consistently to resist these things. But if you look, as we get older in life, having taken on more responsibility, people depend, people who work for us, work with us, businesses to grow, marriages, children, family, investments. These are all things that, if approached from the perspective that struggle is beneficial, you're going to get that person at the end of their life who actually lived a life of growth and actually became someone fundamentally different than the person that just started out, so to speak, with a twinkle in their eye and all their life ahead of them.
Well, I think one of the things entrepreneurs specifically don't do enough of is reflect on their success and acknowledge their success. Just seeing where you were versus where you are, and having that perspective that you have done this and you will do it again.
Yeah.
Not just arriving to the day with, can I do this? Well, of course you can. Look where you did it. But we as entrepreneurs, and that's why I love EO so much, is because it engages you with like-minded peers. Oftentimes, entrepreneurs and business owners don't have that connection. They're out there on an island, and they don't know. Yeah, these feelings are normal, and it's okay to celebrate your wins. Talk about why someone should engage a coach like yourself, or have a peer group.
Well, it's interesting. I thought I kind of going back to some of our former conversations. If you feel like you're on an island, something has gone wrong, because none of us are on islands, and none of our journeys specifically. Again, that's such an interesting thing. That was like kind of one of my like big, opening my eye moments. It's like, I had a very specific niche that I worked in and I knew well, and I didn't really talk to anyone outside that bubble. I worked as a rabbi at UCLA. And what I realized as soon as I started talking to like business people, entrepreneurs, I was like, oh my gosh, a lot of things that I'm saying here are relevant over here. And a lot of the things that I know, like, that's over here. And so I had built an island for myself, but that was of my own device. And I think that was kind of reflecting a lack of maturity. So even if, again, it is super valuable. I actually have a client right now that I'm working on with this. And this is, again, I'm sort of like throwing out benefits of this as it goes. I have a client who is one of those island type of guys. everyone who works from him, either everyone who he's surrounded by, either more or less eats off his table. So it's always like, what can you do for me? Or you have to do this. And of course, the reason why they have to do that is it's going to, well, make the people who are giving him the advice wealthy. Surprise, surprise. The lawyers, he's unfortunately going through a divorce right now. So the lawyers want to stay on for a long time. They want to, and it's like, well, of course. And all of his investors.
Right.
So the idea is, for me personally, I said, you have to be around other people who are successful that don't need anything from you. And he has a very hard time making decisions. So I said, let's get you around people that are by nature very decisive, right? So there's this idea that if you're on an island, recognize that that's a problem. And even if you do end up talking to your kids or your spouse or the people that work for you, realize if you engage them on a human basis, they're going to be going through the same kinds of struggles, just in different arenas. So that's an important insight to say. You don't have to flush your friend group to just connect with people more. That being said, the value in my perspective, and I talk it because I live it so much. I'm like a race car in the fact that I have so many people that are working on me all the time. People make fun of me, and I invest a ton of money in it. But as a result of that, I've been able to build the level of my business, my insight, and help my clients the way that I'm able to. Because at the end of the day, it's like, I believe if you believe in your potential and if you believe in the vision of what you want to create, you don't want to spare any time or expense getting to there. Because again, going back to that, we talked about a growth mindset, but this abundance mentality, it's like, again, same thing. I have a friend that was telling me, it's a good idea. If you want to buy a car, for the record, I'm in Arizona right now. He said, maybe Alabama has better deals. And I'm like, by the time I've driven to Alabama and brought the car back, I could have made possibly the price of the car itself, right? So it's like, how do you invest in what would it look like? Again, I have to do all of this work. It's like, again, not to current company included, right? You have a wonderful, kind-hearted, amazing businessman who wants to jump in and help the employees that are working really hard. And we'll work late hours to help the people. And the idea is like, do you have to be doing this? Or if you do what you're supposed to do, you could bring in so much more help for the employees and you could keep going on and doing what you actually ideally want to do. So that idea of being in touch with your potential and what you want to build, and then surrounding yourself with and engaging people that are going to help you get there and get there faster, I can't think of any more valuable resource in the world, because you will create so much more coming from that place versus hanging on, batting down the hatches again, and just trying to handle it yourself.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like we discussed, and I've had this discussion with my team, my leadership team, is it's real easy to be busy, right? It's real easy to feel productive, doing the things that you're good at. They may not necessarily be things that you love, but they're things that you can take some satisfaction in completing. And it's easy to drift into that space when you are feeling unsure, in times like this. So it's easy to just focus on the things that you can get done that are producing some value, rather than saying, what, is this really the highest and best use of my time to get where I want to go?
Yeah. And that question is everything. And I think it, and also it's that idea of, again, going back to the idea of a coach or a mirror. There's I don't know if you feel this way, but a lot of times, people will wonder what business they're actually in. And again, going back to, I mean, that's a fundamental question we all have to ask, but especially when it comes to like people that are involved with investments and money managers. I was talking to a client and he was telling me he said, I don't know if I'm making this guy as much money as he could do it by himself. And the bottom line was, the guy was paying him so that a competent, reliable person could try to do the best job he can. So this other guy didn't have to. It's because this guy could be going over his balance sheet. And again, this guy might make more money. I said, you're in the business of providing peace of mind and expert advice. And you hired a team who was going to use your investment strategy to try to make this guy as much money. But the reason why he hired you wasn't so that you would make more money than he could make. You're in the business of giving him peace of mind and letting him focus on things he wants to do. He's not an investment manager. He just wants to go play golf or something like that, right? So want to go ahead.
Well, no. Well, I was just going to add on to that. I think one of the commonalities most business owners struggle with, and we have struggled with it over the years, is just that question. What business are you in? Where is your real value?
Right.
And as you grow, as you want to expand and scale, the reality is you have to get more and more specific and more tuned into that, because at the beginning you don't have to be real clear on it, right? But as you grow and want to involve others, employees, and you want to scale, you have to be hyper focused on what it is. I think about Vern Harnish's example in scaling up, and I don't remember the company's name, but it's a commercial dishwasher manufacturer, and their niche is hotels that and high-end restaurants that want to have clean glasses that not are just are clean but look clean, right. So their whole thing is, they come in and set up water filtration systems and all this. It's a package deal, and they have like 80% market share. Why? Because if I'm opening a Marriott, there's no bidding. I know exactly who I'm going to call because that's what I want, and they deliver it. But I think we have this tendency as business owners to want to help everybody at the same time, and the reality is that saying no is the key to growing, right?
Saying no, and also being open to being open to the idea that I have to, this is going to sound terribly self-serving, but I have to do what I want. And that's also difficult because it's hard to tell people no. And there's also this limiting belief that if I don't tell everyone no to things that aren't entirely in line to what I want, somehow I'm going to miss out. But the reality is, again, if you look at the older we are, the more we are able, hopefully this is how things are supposed to go, right? The more that we can get clear and go deep into the areas that really speak to us. And the biggest tragedy I've found for some folks is they get to a certain age and they've been so good at one thing, but the thing that they're good at, they don't really care about, right? And so that's that differentiator. Are you looking just to exit, or are you saying like, no, I'll exit, I don't exit. I'm going to probably be doing this for the rest of my life though, not because I need to. And that's where, and again, I always talk about it. It's like, we kind of, I'm from California. So I remember having a conversation with a Christian when I was sitting in Venice Beach. And we're like, that's where the artist is. The artist is, wandering around Venice Beach, the Hollywood Hills. The artist is the entrepreneur. And so the artist is going to paint because artists paint. Right. So the entrepreneur is going to create businesses, not because they need the money, but because that's how they create. And that's how they express their value to the world.
You quoted Bruce Lee. I will quote another Bruce Lee. He said, I'd much rather, I fear the man that has practiced a punch 1,000 times than one that has practiced 1,000 punches. That's who he fears. So I want to open the floor to questions from the audience. The Q&A button is available. I love this quote from one of the chat. This participant said, saying yes is easy. We define ourselves by what we say no to. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. So if any of you have any questions that you want to ask Jacob, please type them into the question and answer box below, and we will open it up.
Yes.
Do you have any parting thoughts? Words of wisdom?
Well, now you put me on the spot.
I know.
I think that success is a horizon. I think success is a horizon. And another amazing quotable from my coach was that there's no she's very close to Dan Sullivan, so I have a feeling it sounds like a Dan Sullivan quote. But I feel bad if I don't give her the credit. But she says there's no impossible goals, just impossible timelines. And I think that concept is such a calming factor, because the idea is that we can accomplish whatever we want if we just take, again, same thing. I think it was either John, I think it was possibly John Adams or Benjamin Franklin or Ronald Reagan. I'm not sure which one. It says, as long as you can get anything done, as long as you don't care who gets the credit. right? Which is
Right.
this idea that we have a tendency to think in a box, and that's only because we're kind of relying on ourselves. And if we open up the box and we say, this is how I usually will pose questions to clients or to myself, it's like, if I give you all the support and resources that you need to make anything happen, what would you make happen? Because we always think to ourselves like, oh shit, if I have to go do this, I'm gonna have to go out and sell, or I'm gonna go out and raise money. I don't want to raise money, right? Or, oh man, I'm gonna have to work more hours. I don't want to work more hours. It's like, no, I'm giving you all the resources. So you could put a system in so you could work the 3 hours you want to work and still have that. The question is, how do we do it? Who do you need to do something like that? So if you have that, again, going back to the growth mindset, the abundance mentality, this idea of what would I accomplish if I had all the support and help I needed, and the timeline was moving out, right? Because most of us hopefully aren't on our last days on earth. And if so, we might as well enjoy it anyway, right? So it's like, if I have a longer timeline, what do I want to create? And also, again, thinking that it's not about the exit or the dollar amount associated with what we do, but the kinds of people we are and the kinds of lives that we're living. And if that's the approach, it's like all of a sudden everything becomes a lot more fun.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's just spot on. I think that if like Elon Musk, he said we're going to have self-driving cars at some point in the future, so why not now? I mean, that was exactly his mindset in starting it. So it is getting out of your own way, right? That's what you started with.
Right.
All right, so we don't have any questions from the audience, but Jacob, I love our time together, even though I don't always look forward to it. I love our time together, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much, guys. It was a pleasure. Hopefully this was valuable. And Christian, thank you so much for everything. You are a very valued friend and an amazing individual. So thank you so much.
I'll wave until the camera goes by. Thanks.